Hello and welcome back to the Sideboard. I am Ruben Bressler and I'm joined by magic artist Eric Deschamps. Eric, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And as you can see, we've got some pieces here in front of us. We've got Gerard, Tamio, and Venser from recent sets. You've also done lots of other famous pieces, iconic pieces like Celestial Colonnade, Jin Gataxia's Core Augur, lots of things like that. Tell the folks at home how you got started in art.
Started in art?
General.
Well, I think I used to draw a lot in my room. I lived in a neighborhood where a lot of kids were older than I was, so I didn't have anybody to play with as much as some other kids might have. So I just spent a lot of time just drawing comic books and reading comic books, and that's really my start, is doing that. And so that's how I got in.
And then you got involved in fantasy art at some point, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I went to college for art, and I ended up being a graphic designer, but then after school I realized I want to draw and paint every day. So then I kind of just changed over and worked on my portfolio a lot, and then eventually what I started doing is showing my work to other artists, like via email. And then at one point somebody said, I think you're ready, and then he gave me a few art director emails, and a couple of them were at Wizards of the Coast, and I emailed back and forth and got a good response, but I didn't get any work from it. But then, so I said, all right, well, I'm going to go all the way out to the San Diego Comic-Con, and they had portfolio reviews there. So I met the art director I'd been emailing with in person, and then I think that's how I got my first job.
So if you're an artist out there, go to the cons and meet the people.
Yeah,
it's very important.
Because then they can tell that you seem like you'd be a professional person, and you're not going to slack off, and you're going to get the stuff in on time. They can kind of tell that from in-person meeting.
You can only learn so much from the art, I guess.
Yeah, and then just an email too. You never know.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure the email helps as well, but so it worked out well. And so my first job ever was actually for Magic the Gathering.
Nice.
It was Unhinged.
Unhinged, and you did Pygmy Giant.
Pygmy Giant and the Goblin SWAT team.
SWAT team, nice. And so those are some of your pieces, but not the most iconic pieces ever.
Yeah, the first one ever.
your most iconic piece is probably it's tough. You've done a lot of Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
And I would say probably the first Venser, which is right here, is one of your most iconic pieces. And you were saying this is your favorite piece?
I think it is because I knew it was going to be important, and I put a lot into it. Because it was having to do Mirrodin was difficult because everything was chrome and a lot of metal, and it's a lot of things to render, and so. Especially the background and everything, it just took me forever. So, just because of that, it's and it being an important card, it's a special place for it. So
now you do a lot of plot central cards like Venser, like Gerard, like Tamio, but you also have some not so plot central cards like Pygmy Giant, for example.
Yeah.
Do you care whether cards get tournament play? Do you care whether they're central to the story, or do you just like the art regardless?
Well, when it comes to doing the actual art, it doesn't really matter as much as long as it's a cool image. But a lot of times, if I'm coming to tournaments like that, and I get to talk to other players, and I get to draw the characters and alters, it's way better to have.
It's way better to have a central.
Yeah, because then they're really into it. And,
right.
If you have a bunch of cards that nobody cares about, it's a little more boring.
Sure.
So you can have a lot of fun with the players.
Nice. Now you're a character specialist, I guess. Like you do faces.
I think so. And I think when I first started doing art, I was more of a creature guy. And then I realized at some point that I thought, I'm good at creatures, but I'm not really good at doing people. So I made it a point to get better at that. And then at some point I realized, wow, I'm way better at this, and I'm not as good at the creatures now.
Sure.
So it depends on how much time you put into things. So.
And Wizards is continuing, of course, to use your talents. You've been tapped to do upcoming sets as well as Ravnica.
Yep.
And do you think that working on Magic has sort of changed? I don't want to say changed your style, but affected you in some way, and that you've become a different kind of artist had you not been involved in Magic?
Definitely, because I think before I started Magic, everything in my head was science fiction.
Sure.
And now it's fantasy, and it was a slow
Unless you're drawing
progression.
Izzet cards.
Yeah, a little bit more. But even that, you have to be careful. You don't want it to look too science fiction, and then it doesn't look like Magic. So.
Right. one of the Is It cards, I'm reminded actually, just reminded myself, was a Planeswalker named, I forget his name.
He was in the Duel of the Planeswalkers game. His name is Ral Zarek.
Yeah, Ral Zarek, that's his name.
Yeah, so
and
he was
that's
in
an
the
art
game.
that you've done.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's, I guess you can't answer this question, but you do.
No, all I know is you get the assignment, you do it for whatever it's supposed to be, and then you
I
never
almost
know.
asked you a question that I know you can't answer,
Yeah,
even if you knew the answer. But I'll back off. But the art
No,
is
because that happens a lot. You get cards and you're like, oh yeah, you're thinking it's going to come out in Ravnica, and then it doesn't. You're like, oh, all right,
sure.
So you don't know.
Now, I just want to wrap this interview up with one last question, which is, Tamio is nicknamed Socks with Sandals.
Yeah.
Was that in the design file, or was that a choice of yours to give Tamio
I
Socks with
wanted
Sandals?
to do Socks with Sandals.
Well, you've affected Magic forever.
You know what? Because she's really, really pale white. Since when I did the sketch, I kind of was really loose on the toes, and I put the sandals on, and I was like, it kind of looks like Socks and Sandals. I like that. I'm gonna keep it. You know? So
Excellent.
I just went with it.
Well, everyone identifies her as Socks with Sandals, and I wish you all the best, because you're one of my favorite artists, and it's
thank you.
Your work is fantastic, Eric. Thank you for joining me in the sideboard.
Thanks.